AI, Artificial Intelligence, is a polarizing film in the body of work of director Steven Spielberg. It spent years in development as a project by Stanley Kubrick in the 1970s based on Brian Aldiss's short story Super Toys Last All Summer Long. Kubrick was close to making the film in 1985 with a treatment written by writer Ian Watson, and Spielberg brought on as a producer, but ultimately Kubrick decided that a child actor could not portray a robot boy, and special effects could not render him convincing enough at the time. After seeing Spielberg's Jurassic Park in 1993, Kubrick and Spielberg discussed the possibility of using CGI to create the main character. After Kubrick's death in 1999, shortly after completing his final film Eyes Wide Shut, Spielberg wrote a script based on Watson's outline and Kubrick's notes and storyboards, finally bringing the film to life. The work is a strange mix of Kubrick and Spielberg styles to many. A number of Spielberg fans see the film as odd and coldly intellectual, while many Kubrick fans accuse Spielberg of making Kubrick's vision overly sentimental. Kubrick and Spielberg are two filmmakers who could not seem more different than each other, but the finished film remarkably reflects both directors' unique visions in equal measure. While Spielberg told stories of optimists fighting against corrupt systems, Kubrick liked stories of men destroyed by their own hubris. While Spielberg was attracted to themes of patriotism and honor, Kubrick portrayed dehumanism and cruelty. A horror film by Spielberg would be about a family terrorized by an outside force, while a horror film by Kubrick involved the horror coming from within. Even with all these differences, both men had some similar themes emerge in their science fiction works. Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange and Spielberg's Minority Report are both about societies going too far in an attempt to make a safe and stable community. Kubrick's film is painted with dark irony, while Spielberg's film is more optimistic, but both men have made films about how technological advances and contact with alien life might change the way we view being human. For many fans of both directors, it is still hard to see what they admired about each other. Kubrick brought Spielberg onto the AI project after seeing his E.T. It is very easy to see Kubrick's desire to make AI as wanting to make his version of E.T., and even the titles are remarkably similar to each other. Kubrick had instructed Watson that his vision was to create a science fiction fairy tale and gave him Pinocchio for inspiration. As for Spielberg's admiration of Kubrick, despite having a natural talent for winning mainstream audience sympathies, Spielberg has longed to make films as adult and respected as Kubrick's. A film like Schindler's List succeeds for how much Spielberg restrains his inclination to please an audience and how unsparingly he portrays the brutality of the Holocaust. And his later film, Munich, is the closest Spielberg has ever come to making a film as dark and ruthless as Kubrick could be. AI's story about a robot boy programmed to love his human mother only to be discarded and spend the rest of his existence searching for her is perfect material for a Kubrick and Spielberg collaboration. The loss of normalcy, often represented by the estrangement or destruction of the family, is a chief theme of Spielberg's. Kubrick, on the other hand, has been obsessed with humanity's potential for innovation and ambition, juxtaposed with humanity's cruelty and ability to destroy ourselves. AI realizes both themes as fully as any film either man made separately and resembles a mashup of Spielberg's E.T. and Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. It is interesting to analyze the films separately, as a Spielberg film and as a Kubrick project. Spielberg's E.T. was about a lonely, fatherless boy who befriends an alien. That film used science fiction as a metaphor for alienation told through the eyes of a child. Elliot's bond with E.T. is a psychic one, and in a way the alien takes the place of the boy's absent father. Eventually, Elliot would have to let E.T. go. It is tempting to read this surrender as a metaphoric journey of Elliot to face the fact of his father's abandonment and to let go of his attachment to him. AI has a shockingly similar thematic thread as E.T. David is programmed to love his mother. His mother abandons him when her real son returns. She originally intends to bring him back to the company that he came from, but knowing that he will be destroyed, she cannot bear it and decides to dump him on the side of the road. The theme of parental abandonment not only appears in E.T., but several other Spielberg movies as well, but no other Spielberg film portrays it as brutally as it is portrayed here. If E.T. is about a boy who must let go of his father in order to grow up, AI is about a boy who can never let go of the abandonment of his mother and therefore will never grow up. This is represented literally in the narrative, as David is a robot and cannot grow up, but the metaphor attached here leads us to darker territory than Spielberg's E.T. Kubrick had intended for AI to be a fairy tale, but like all fairy tales, it has a darkness lurking beneath its fantasy. The combination of Kubrickian and Spielbergian themes allow Spielberg to go to a darker place with this story of childhood abandonment than he would have otherwise. Around the time he was making AI, Spielberg was hitting this theme pretty hard in his work. His previous film, Saving Private Ryan, was about an attempt to bring a man home from war after all his brothers had been killed. Once he was found, though, he decided that the men he fought with were his true family, and he could not abandon them. In his next film, Minority Report, the main character is motivated to create a safer world by the kidnapping of his son, but the film ends with his starting a new family. In Catch Me If You Can, made that same year, the main character is motivated by the loss of his father, but finds a new father figure in the man who has been chasing him. That brings us to the often discussed ending of AI. The film ends with David being found frozen after waiting for his mother in the ocean for 2,000 years. He is found by intelligent AI who have evolved from the mechas of his time and want to study humans in the hope of understanding the secrets of their existence. Because David, even after all this time, is only interested in reuniting with his mother, they are able to recreate her using DNA from a lock of hair. They also say they can apparently only create her for a single day before the clone dies. This ending being the most polarizing thing in the film, it brings up one of the things about the film that is most polarizing about the film in general. Its mix of fairy tale and hard science fiction. Most of the time, a film's logic only has to function internally for the film to work. In this way, AI doesn't violate our demand for a logically consistent film world. It does, however, leave a number of details from start to finish almost maddeningly vague. The appearance of the blue fairy and the fact that David's mother can only be revived for a day is one of those weird moments in the film, and many see this as another example of Spielberg's wish fulfillment he has given to other characters. However, the film has darker undertones that many who see it as a standard Spielberg fantasy don't give it credit for. Since we are to assume that the advanced AI's intent is to study David, this use of the blue fairy and the bringing back his mother for a single day comes off kind of cruelly clinical. It also doesn't make a lot of sense from a hard science standpoint. A person could pick it apart all day long, coming up with reasoning and then demolishing their own reasoning behind the mystery, but to me it doesn't matter because the ending works so well on a darkly Freudian level. Kubrick loved to use Freudian themes and imagery in his work, and AI is not an exception to that. The entire act of David imprinting on one parent, as opposed to the short story where he bonds to both, has a Freudian dimension. While Elliot in E.T. would move past his abandonment, David never will, and the last shot of the movie, the one that critics of the film think is so sappy and sentimental, is literally David lying in bed, his mother having gone to sleep next to him to die. An ageless child lying in bed with his dead mother is one of the most subversive and weird things Spielberg has ever shot, and the fact anybody reads that as sentimental is outright puzzling to me. The imprinting element of the film seems to be a sticking point for some of the film's most outspoken critics, often wondering why a robot would be commercially made with such a limited ability in the first place, but the metaphor that Kubrick wished to establish through this device could not be clearer. AI is a film about profound loneliness, and despite being merely a machine, David goes through the arc that an abandoned child might go through, his literal agelessness being a metaphor for how childhood trauma can follow into adulthood. The use of artificial intelligence in this film mirrors Kubrick's themes that he explored in 2001: A Space Odyssey. That film, too, was about humankind transcending their beginnings to become something greater. 2001 opens at the dawn of man, where ape-like creatures first learn to kill one another, and a bone thrown into the air morphs into a space station. Kubrick's point with this imagery is that for all of humankind's technical advancements, this has added up to little more than new ways to kill each other. The film chronicles human evolution linked to first contact with other intelligent life forms, but AI shows the advancement of humankind leading toward our own destruction, but living on through our creations. David is considered an advancement in AI because he exhibits what is considered genuine love, but the question of what this even means is left open. Through Haley Joel Osment's performance, we see a development in David from the more robotic being he is at the beginning to being almost human. But some critics of the film complain that the other robots exhibit emotions as well. There are obvious differences between how David behaves and the other robots behave, and this will be explored in my next video about Blade Runner, a film that you hardly ever hear these same criticisms made despite the fact they apply just as easily. But this also plays into our overall point about Ex Machina, in that a robot is judged authentically exhibiting artificial intelligence by comparison to humans, because this is our only standard. But there are many things about human consciousness that might be completely irrelevant to a robot. It is telling, for instance, that the two robots we spend the most time with in AI are a robot programmed to love and another programmed for sex. Both of these are things an artificial intelligence would not necessarily need, but are also things that many people would consider essential to the human experience. In this way, man has created robot in their own image. Gigolo Joe states, The ones that created us are always looking for the one that created them. At the end of the film, the advanced AI are in the same boat as humans, trying to piece together the meaning of their own existence while trying to figure out where it is that they came from. Do they have a need for love and sex or other things that human beings once thought were essential? This is left an open question, but it is the one question of AI that connects to Kubrick's 2001.